Playoffs are going to be set a week from now, so let's go ahead and take a look at where teams are right now. This is the playoff line. These are your top 3 teams in each division. There's your 2 wild cards. In the East, it's pretty much cut and dried. Florida right now has 5 games left, so the most they can finish with is 96 points. That's why Columbus hasn't clinched yet. Columbus is a combination of 3 points lost by Florida or gained by them. Combination of both. That's how close they are to getting themselves in the playoffs. Philadelphia is 6 points ahead of Florida, and New Jersey's 5 points ahead. So Florida has lost those games in hand they had, lost their momentum. They have 36 regulation overtime wins. That's what the numbers are that are in parentheses here. That's your first tiebreaker. So Florida had a good chance, if they'd won those games, of getting in the playoffs, because they also had the tiebreaker. And, they get close. And I remember the year that Florida furiously tried to get to the playoffs because Jay Bomeister was going to be a UFA and they wanted to convince him to stick around, and then he signed in Calgary. This feels kind of like that, but different in that they peaked about a month sooner. In the West, Nashville's clinched, Winnipeg's clinched. Minnesota's close. Minnesota's got 96 points. The cutoff line here is 92. So they're not out of the woods. They're 4 points clear of being out of the playoffs. And they've got Colorado and St. Louis, who are both in their division, so they don't have third place locked down either. LA is sitting with 94 points in third. They're 1 point ahead of Anaheim. They're not certain either because they're only 2 points clear of this line that'll knock you out of the playoffs. It is a very, very close race in the West. Dallas has got themselves back into it technically, but they've played one extra game above both Colorado and St. Louis, and they're 4 points back. They have 36 wins, which means that with the 36 regulation and overtime wins, these don't count shootouts. Shootout wins don't count in the first tiebreaker. They're done. So the math may be, they're still alive, but they'd have to win all 3, and they would need both Colorado and St. Louis to completely lose their minds their last 4 games for Dallas to pass both of them. For Anaheim, St. Louis, Colorado, and LA, it's still nail-biting time. I don't think it is for Minnesota at this stage, but hey, they're only 4 points clear with 4 games left, which I guess for baseball fans, they're 2 games up with 2 games left, or 4 games left. It's a lot, but at the same time, the math's kind of tricky. The only team that's clinched their division is Vegas. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody. But it's an interesting playoff picture to be sure. If you want to look at teams that were in the playoffs last year and missed this year, Ottawa, Montreal, Rangers in the East, and in the West, Edmonton, Chicago, Calgary, maybe St. Louis. So right now we're looking at a turnover of 3 teams, and teams that are in the playoffs that were out last year. Tampa, I'll give them an up arrow. Philly right now, and New Jersey. And in the West, Winnipeg, Vegas, because they weren't in the league last year. LA didn't make it last year. Yeah, and that's it. So St. Louis and Anaheim came back from the brink. Both of them were well out of the playoffs at one point this year, or at least in danger of missing the playoffs. It was seen that there's going to be huge playoff turnover. There hasn't been as much turnover in the West as we might have expected, but it's surprising to see Edmonton, Chicago, and Calgary this far out. Edmonton is 18 points out of the playoffs. So again, when we talk about the MVP question, it's not that they're close. They're 18 points out of the playoffs. They are a total of 12 points ahead of dead last in the NHL. Dead last. And Buffalo has a game in hand, so that could be 10 points or less by the end of the year. You want to talk about MVP candidates? You've got Hall in New Jersey, and everybody basically agrees that Taylor Hall probably gets that award right now. Unless McKinnon, Colorado gets in McKinnon. I would say William Karlsson's getting into that conversation with Vegas. That beautiful goal last night, he'll definitely be in there. And then for other teams, people will argue Kucherov, but Stamkos kind of cancels out Kucherov, whether that's fair or not. Marchand didn't play enough games. It's been great. Bergeron didn't play enough games either. Washington, you can and should be talking more about Ovechkin for that award. Pittsburgh, Crosby and Malkin probably cancel each other out, although Malkin's been very good. But see, Crosby's had a good run over the last, 20 games? And that's going to cancel out Malkin talk. Columbus, Bobrovsky. Columbus is in a good spot in that they have some good depth. They're not fantastic in any one part of the game, but they're pretty good in every part of the game. So they'll be hard to shut down in the playoffs. Nashville, you could argue Philip Forsberg. Absolutely. Winnipeg, tough one here. I guess Blake Wheeler would be the one that you would nominate for Hart. Minnesota, Eric Staal, 40 goals at his age, and after so many years of not being anywhere near 40 goals, it's kind of amazing. For San Jose, I don't know. I don't know who you'd pick for San Jose. You can't pick Burns because everybody agrees that defensively he's a disaster. Jones, I don't know if, Dell's been pretty good as a backup too, so I guess you're not going to have Jones. San Jose's a tough team to pin down too. LA, of course, Kopitar. Anaheim, probably Raquel. And St. Louis, Shen, Pietrangelo, Hutton, not Hutton lately. And of course, McKinnon here in Colorado as stated. It'll be an interesting run down to the last game next Sunday, and the last game next Sunday is Florida and Boston, and that could decide whether or not Boston wins the division. I think Florida's going to have already decided that they're out of the playoffs by then, and it's too bad. But there you go. And one other thing I want to point out: all season we've been reading about how the West is so much stronger than the East, and there's so many teams that are going to get knocked out in the West that shouldn't be knocked out because the East is so weak and blah 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 blah. The cutoff point in the West for points for playoffs is 92, and in the East it's 91. 1 point difference. I always find it ridiculous when people talk about completely changing the playoff format, and then you look at it and you go, that's a 1 point difference. And they don't play a balanced schedule, so the schedule that New Jersey's played is different than that played by Colorado. So unless you're playing a completely balanced schedule, you can't look and necessarily say, well, this team has been better than this team this year. It's a weird argument, but again, by the end of the year, it all kind of evens out. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through and you're getting all stoked for the playoffs, as am I. And thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.